that appeared in. If you're not subscribing to that, it's another tool that you should. For instance, it's free. But for instance, Bob is putting out right now for the guys that are translating the ICW, he's putting out an update on what's going on. And he not only gives the update in words, but he's also got the Aquamap link to do it. So again, it's a very helpful thing. It's just, again, another free resource. So this is where we're headed. We want to get to the first thing that Chris is going to talk about is the NANCENT website. Okay, it's a very powerful tool with a lot of stuff there. We're even talking about space operations. Read that. I can see why that's important. We're going to talk about just your navigation and software and hardware. There's a lot of changes that have gone out. A lot of these tools have updated. And so it's a matter of doing it. And then just, it's been a while since most of us were out there, plotting routes, doing things, picking up waypoints in our equipment, and just remembering how to do it is another thing you want to be able to do. You want to be able to tack in, use the trusted routes and waypoints. Again, Bob 423, if you're going to do anything going up and down the intercoastal waterway, that is a tremendous tool that is available to you. And it's, like I say, it's updated. Barry and I did a delivery, essentially almost the entire length of the waterway from here down to Florida. And we followed Bob 423 and never ran aground once. Okay. Then the other thing is that NOAA, you all are aware of the fact that NOAA has terminated their raster charts. That is one of the major things that has caused an impact on how information is disseminated through this. But there's also ways that you can use that. Some of it's hard to do, but you can. Also, NOAA has really, and they have done it for a long time. I'm just waking up to it. But there's a lot of meteorological data out there that we can tap into. It's readily available. What's the average for wind direction? What's the current strength? What is the predicted current strength or the tide level? And what is the actually observed tide? All that stuff is available to you, and you can see it very easily. And then just a couple things about online resources that are available for you to do some sort of. So we've already talked about the fact that NOAA has ended the production of its raster chart products. Now, all the information that comes in is still there, but NOAA is just not using it for any effort against those charts. Now, places like MapTech and everything, they still will produce that information. So essentially, all the charts are no longer updated beginning of January of this year, and they call that sunsetting. And I'll show you how you can get the old charts as we go on. That has a major impact on marine safety information, and again, that ties into what Chris is going to talk about, how that information is available. They consolidate a lot of information on that website. You can find a lot of things. You can find light lists, you can find dam rules, you can find all kinds of stuff on that single port of entry. So it's really a great deal to do. And you've got a capability to tailor the information that you want and print the information you wanted to have. Before, especially used to get local notice mariners, and there was about a 50-page document that you had to go through, and some of it was applicable, most of it wasn't, and even some of the stuff that you should have been aware of, you weren't aware of because you didn't spend the time finding it. It may have been cut back in the tail end of the 50-page document. Now you can get that tail end. So, just one plug about why things change on the law. One of the challenges that we have with electronic aids is we come up with the bills and columns. We look down here rather than looking out there. And that is a real problem. Not only that, but because screen size, what you see doesn't give you the perspective that you need. You're going to get detail, but no perspective, or perspective and no detail. So that's one of the challenges. But things are changing. There's a lot of stuff going here. The Coast Guard used to see in Section 1, this was a repeated refrain that says, don't rely on what's out there, because it changes. Okay, it's always comfortable. Like when you boot up your multifunctional display, and the first thing it says, do not rely on this as the primary means of navigation. Wait a minute, that's the whole reason I bought this thing. Okay, they're changing a lot of fixed aids to floating aids and floating aids to fixed aids. Relocating it, there's a tremendous amount of dredging going on. And aids are being written on that. They're renumbering and renaming those aids. Okay, just one example, Windmill Point Light, anybody go by that in the past 5 years? Well, that's changing, you can find out how they're gonna change that light, it's the distance it shows, the colors it's got, all that's changing. The light right out here is down, okay, they're redoing that, okay? They're discontinuing some of them. And the reason is, it was just one example, but because of AIS, some of those that are kind of marginal, Coast Guard not even gonna put them up. So you may have them on your chart, and you may use them for things, but they're not there. And of course, there's also AIS enabled aids that may be not there physically, but are there AIS file. Okay, and I found this especially up in the New England area. I'm sure it's going to happen down by us. They are modernizing and right-sizing the aids that are there. And if you go into that area, maybe Chris will show you that, is there's a tremendous number of aids that are changing. So anyway, that's why what you see doesn't match what's on your chart, and what's on your chart doesn't do it. And that's one of the big things that you need. I try to talk about when I'm asking about navigation is your ability to translate what's on the chart to what you see, and what you see in the chart is a major task that people tend to overlook. It's simple. Okay, why do we have these things keeping chart updated? We have notice the mariners, which are primarily for commercial ships, longer range kind of stuff. And then we have the local notice the mariner that are done, it covers stuff in coastal waters, and that's the one that really we're concerned about. And again, lots of things are changing in the water. You don't want to log that in. Okay, so that's the web page, and I'll turn it over to Chris. And he, by the way, is the guy who is responsible for designing this, and is the responsible guy who did the app that he's going to talk about. So he's the man. So ask your questions. This is the first time he's had the opportunity to get feedback or questions from the people he serves. So this is great opportunity.
Thanks so much, Steve. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to you all for hosting me. Absolutely fantastic. You guys are my guinea pigs. This is the first time I've gotten to come out into the public and speak to the public about my work. We have our own outreach team and at NAVCEN, they're the ones who usually go out and do all the outreach. So, I jumped at the opportunity. Happy anniversary to my wife. She's such a trooper for wanting to be here, but she wanted to see me present. So I'm going to spend the day in Norfolk and then end up in Eastridge. So anniversary weekend. So a couple things, Steve was talking, he kind of prompted me to start off with a few things. You guys are the reason why I exist, why I go to work every day as a therapist. Literally, you are who I serve. So I will always want to do the best job by you. And what that looks like is doing my best to keep you guys safe. There is so much information, as Steve mentioned, that you need to know as a mariner, from paddling a kayak to piloting a container ship. There is so much you need to know. It's our job at the Navigation Center to give it to you in a way that's usable and not to overwhelm. And that is something that's easy and efficient and nice to look at as well. So that's kind of the whole point. The other thing is that you guys are our eyes, and we depend on you tremendously. We get 8-ton discrepancy reports every single day, sometimes a dozen, where folks just like you are out on the water and you're like, that's not where it's supposed to be. That light, that doesn't exist anymore. Oh my gosh, there's some shoaling here, or there's obstruction, or hey, they're doing some work over here on this bridge that nobody's talking about. And you guys come to the NAVCEN website and you report. So I don't want to underestimate how important you all are being out there on water. So never forget that. And if you have an opportunity to let us know about something, please do, because the NAVCEN website is the one-stop shop and report that kind of stuff. We'll make sure that it gets to the teacher listening. Real quick before we get into the website and now
You're going to have we get
check.
Chris, physically, where are you? Are you in Norfolk?
Right, so we are up in Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay.
And I want to introduce, I'll talk a little bit about myself and then talk a little bit about the Navigation Center, but we are, no, you're good. So we're up on Telegraph Road in Alexandria, Virginia. It's really just a few miles from the Beltway and a few miles from Old Town. So right outside the nation's capital. If you're familiar with the Hayfield High School area, that's kind of where we are up at Telegraph Road. Do I wish we were out on the bay or, even out on the Atlantic coast? Absolutely. But, the small base used to belong to the Navy. Been there for a long time. It's really historic. So it's really nice that we don't have to drive to Coast Guard headquarters, which is inside the Beltway. Yeah, traffic is brutal. So we're very happy to be there. But real quick, while he's getting this up and running, a little bit about myself. So, Naval Academy graduate. I sailed on the offshore sailing team when I was there for 3 years. Got to sail some Navy 44s. Participated in the 92 Newport to Bermuda race, Spartan Stevens 49 called Cinnamon. Also sailed a couple other boats up there in the bay. We participated in a lot of local races. We also did Block Island. So got a little bit of street cred when it comes to sailing, but that was a long time ago. I hope to get back into it soon. Went on to serve 12 years in the Navy as a Seahawk helicopter pilot. I was a West Coast pilot, so San Diego and Hawaii. So unfortunately not here in Norfolk or Jacksonville. And let's see, been married to this beautiful woman for 28 years. Been working for the Navigation Center for 4.5 years now. Now, we actually live in South Carolina, and I was one of those telework employees who was up a couple of times a month. But with the current administration, we regret to be in the office now full time. So Lonnie came up this week and, I worked in the office and she worked in the hotel and that's why we've had the opportunity to be here today. So I've been a federal employee for almost 25 years now. I've worked for the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense as a uniformed officer and civilian, Department of the Interior, and now the Department of Homeland Security. So I've worked for a lot of different agencies. And again, the way I look at my job is to be out there serving you. Let me talk a little bit about the Navigation Center. Okay, so we are under the Deputy Commandant for Operations and the Director of Marine Transportation Systems. Now, we have a sister command called Coast Guard Navigation. We're the Navigation Center, they're Coast Guard Navigation. They're CG Nav, that's how they're appropriately referred to. They are the folks that come up with the policy. They make all the decisions. So a lot of these things you guys have questions on, why are you doing this now? Why are you doing that now? Why is local notice of mariners changed? That all comes from CG Nav. And what they do is we take their policy and we execute. I'm part of what's called the Maritime Safety Information Distribution Division. And that's what we do. We distribute maritime safety information. And again, our goal is to get it to the public in the best, most efficient, and most easy to use way possible. So that's kind of a little background. Now, I'm going to do my best to answer a lot of your questions that you have. I don't obviously have like the detailed policy knowledge, but I'll take your questions back to the command. You can also go to the NAVCEN website, fill out one of our contact forms if you want further information. Again, our goal is to answer all emails within 24 hours. Make sure that the message gets to the person. So, so I'll show you the app here in just a second and show you the Navigation Center website and kind of talk a little bit about everything there. One of the questions, so last thing I'm going to get a little bit more time here to cover kind of the three major things that have recently happened that kind of seem like one thing to you all. And it's a lot of change. And I apologize for that because we all don't like significant change, especially a lot of change at once. Obviously, it's not my, I'm a middle child, so I take on responsibility more than I. So I'm apologizing for policy decisions that were made way above me. But three things that happened were, number one, no sunsetted its charts, right? So the end of mass printed charts. That was a biggie. The second is the Coast Guard went from a legacy database system called IETANIS, which kept this inventory of all these aids navigation and everything about them, and moved to a new system called UNCs. Now, when they did that, they made the decision in conjunction with the sunsetting of the charts that we're going to reorganize the way these are presented to the public in a different way. That's what you're seeing on our website, and it's now organized by water. That decision, I don't have the details on it, but it was made way above me, and it's not going to change. So the way things are now is the way they're always going to be, at least for the foreseeable future. So you take a look at the legacy way that the light list and the local notices mariners were organized. Now it's by water. And the third thing that happened is with the sunsetting of the paper charts, NAVCEN and CG Nav said, hey, we've got to give the public a way to see this stuff visually now that we're not mass producing these charts anymore. And so they were going to use a commercial product that's produced by the company Esri. That didn't work out, so they came to us. Luckily, we were already working on it in the meantime because we're the navigation center and this is what we do. And so I was given the job of developing what we now call the MSI or the Maritime Safety Information App. That's what I'm going to show you today, where you're able to visually bring up the light list, all the ATONs in our inventory, both federal and private, and then all the local notices to mariners. Everything from bridge maintenance and events, reconstruction, marine events, discrepant aids, all the stuff that you need to know to stay safe on the water. That's perfect timing.
I got it on
Yeah, well, no, yeah, we're not professional like Steve. To say that for him to walk in the door and he says, "Hey, what I love about your app, as a software developer, we get very good. Most of the time, we get criticism, and it's probably a lot true in many professions, right? Right? You only hear something if you do something, wrong, right? So you hear somebody.
Must be working right.
I know, right? Are we? Oh.
No, that should be that's the browser, right? That's the browser. Oh, no, you have to share the browser. Share,
Okay. Getting a different page than I'm getting.
We run into these problems too. You know, Microsoft is not the, it's a word.
Probably Zoom. There you go. No, that's the presentation.
Yes. Here's what it looks like, Steve.
So Chris, what class?
95.
95, okay. And what squadron?
Yeah, I was, I proven golf, a lot of them away from home. We love, yeah, I would. It was definitely. Yeah.
There's HSL 37? Okay. Okay.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so the navigation center website. I'll run through the app first, and then I'll show you all the other products we got from PMU site and see what we've got. We're going to be modifying the homepage here soon. We still have our video up. If we got this great video that we had done professionally. If you want to see what's going on, one of the new things we added up here in the header. So hopefully everyone's familiar with the former site home port. It's where you go for the MARSEC level and port status. Okay, so the Coast Guard did good with that last weekend. And we had about 4 days to absorb some of their content. We brought over the MARSEC pages from them. So that's what that header has to be about. So currently you can get to our app one of two ways. We now have obviously the LNMs link in the gray nav bar. It used to go to local notices to mariners, but now it goes to our application. I'm just going to do, I don't want to take too much time. I'm going to give you kind of a quick intro of what the different pieces and parts are so you can use this and kind of how you bring up the different layers of information. And then I'll spend as much time on your questions as you have. So obviously, this is a map on a website. Okay, I'm using a JavaScript library called Leaflet. It's used throughout government. It's built for the web, it's built to display maps on the web. But what my goal was to make this similar to what we're all kind of used to using out there, which is Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, that kind of stuff. So it's just this map interface that you can bring up. We've got a couple tools going on here. Starting in the upper left-hand corner, we've got our north compass orientation. It's obvious that it's a north orientation, but we've got the standard tools to zoom in and zoom out. This is a full screen tool where this is really helpful when you're accessing it on your tablet or your phone with the full screen. And then we've got a really cool line draw functionality where you can draw a line to measure distance, and you can switch between nautical miles, kilometer miles, and statute miles. And then we've got a standard positioning. There you go. That's going to put us right here. So it's the, sorry, I'm going to put on my eyeballs here. No longer have the pilot eye as I used to. So this little target, it's a locate functionality, and it uses the same thing. If you go to a restaurant website or a business website and the little screen comes up and says, can this website use your location? And you click agree. That's what it's using. It's standard web technology. So that puts us right there. Now, by default, we have the NOAA ENCs overlay, as you can see as they fill in here. Now, this is a dynamic data coming in. We are accessing NOAA servers to load the ENCs. And this is kind of what NOAA's moved to. They want everyone to rely on these ENCs now that the paper charts are.
Everybody understand what ENCs are?
Electronic navigation charts. So basically it should represent what was previously on the charts. And you can actually, I'm going to go over here to the menu. Before I get there, down in the bottom left-hand corner, we have the position of the cursor in both degrees, minutes, seconds, and decimal degrees. And then we have our scale, which is exactly the kind of scale you'd see on Google Maps, Apple Maps. The really important piece up here is what's called the pancake menu. You've probably seen these on other websites. It's just kind of a standard icon. And this displays all the layers that you can plot. Now, when you're looking at a web map, we refer to the data as layers. And you just kind of picture it as a pancake where you can deselect and select layers to have data show up on your map. That's basically what it's doing. Now I can turn off, so right here under electronic navigation charts is the toggle for ENC. So I can take that off if I need to have a little bit more clearer picture of what's going on, or I can toggle it if I want to verify the different symbology, maybe the water depths, the obstructions, those kinds of things that the ENCs demonstrate. Now, if you have some inland ENCs loaded, we're still kind of working on that. The Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for the inland electronic navigation charts. Their servers aren't quite as fast as NOAA's, so if you tried to bring this up, not all the rivers in the United States are covered, but like the Mississippi, the Allegheny, those kinds of things up near Pittsburgh. The delivery of the data is a little slower, but we're working on that and we're going to get that up to speed. But I at least wanted to point it out since it's in the menu. So the two main things we're interested in looking at like this, which is the inventory of instant navigation in the United States waterways, both federal and private. And we've got over 55,000. So I'm going to go ahead and select that layer. And you can see this blue bar across the top that tells you the selection is blue. I want to kind of explain what you're seeing here. First of all, it's 55,000. So it's a lot of data. My goal is I don't want you sitting there all day waiting for data from the computer, right? So I did some tweaking and kind of compress the data a little bit to get all this data loaded at once. And the other thing I'm using is called clustering. You've got these different colored bubbles. And the reason why I'm using clustering is there's so much data that when you're zoomed out to a certain level, it's going to clobber your view. There's going to be so many daytime, you're not going to know what to see. So we've gone ahead and I've clustered this. So we're going to kind of zoom in on where we are and we're here. Once we get to zoom level 11, which is highlighted up here in the left-hand corner, you can tell where the zoom level we're at. Now all the clusters break out into all the data. And again, this is a little busy as well. The whole point behind producing a map for the public that shows this information is to make it as usable as possible. We're visual creatures. We like to see colors. We like to see shapes. We like to see our position in the world and the stuff in relation to us. And so that was our goal. And so, you know, this is really the whole point of this is to localize information to what you need right here, you know, for your sailing club, for your, you know, your boat, your trek, wherever you're going. We want it to localize to you all. So that's where I'm going to zoom in right here. So one of the things you can do is you can actually click on an aid and it opens up what's called a pop-up and it gives you all the details for, say, this thimble shoal light movie number 21. It's got all these details, probably more than you need, but we didn't want to restrict any of the information that we received from Coast Guard Navigation, who's the originator and the maintainer of this data. We didn't want to restrict any of it. We wanted to give the public everything they might want possibly to need. So you can click on an ATON and view its data. Then you can, if you want to, all the data that's contained in the screen here, if I click on this data table button, I can scroll down and it's taken all the data from all these ATON that I'm seeing in the view that I'm looking at, and it's putting it into a table format. And we can scroll through here, and these column formats basically match what's always been listed in the light list. So we haven't strayed too far from, you know, the name, the position, characters, et cetera, and then the remarks on it. So a couple different ways to get information on the light list. And So, and once I move, that table disappears, and the reason is because anytime I pan, which is moving back and forth across the earth, or zoom, now I've got a new view and I've got the ability to generate that new table for it. And you also saw that print button, it also allows you to print that. So again, the idea is, this is where I'm operating, this is where I'm concerned about. Let me get this information. If I want to print it out and take it with me, if you want to access it on my phone, you got to go. It's okay. All right, so the next piece, and I'm going to zoom out here, are what are called our local notices to mariners categories. Now, 18 of them. There are 18 of them, and they're all shown in the menu here. Now, initially when
Debbie asked, if you zoom in, not click on it, will it show the mark name, maybe the light sequence like real charts, or like if you hover over it, it'll do the same thing?
So for the individual icons for
Yeah.
the dates, yeah, so hovering it doesn't produce anything. You actually have to click on it in order to get that that pop-up. And what's in that pop-up is all the information that we receive and giving to you. So if there's something additional you're looking for, that's not showing, that might have, been available in the previous charts, let us know and we'll report that to CGNav and get that corrected. Hopefully that.
Yeah. Said it's hard at night in particular, I guess.
Oh, right, okay. That's a really good point, and that comes. We are gonna be doing some nighttime testing, and that's kind of one of the next stages we're moving to. That's not the first time I've heard that comment. We've got another public comment, so I really appreciate that. That is the feedback that I need to go ahead and refine this. So we're gonna experiment, so maybe some color scheme changes, to make it more readable when you're in low light. Sir.
Perhaps an idea for hover function, right? The marker number and the light sequence
Okay,
might be helpful and
You bet.
hover instead of clicking in.
you bet, gotcha. That's a great point. That's a great point. Probably because, this is a lot of information that you
Yeah,
really
I mean,
don't
we-
need. What do you need, You do things.
Grammar, what's the number? That's
Exactly. Great. Okay, yeah,
Even if when you click on it, you're by each other.
okay.
When you click on it down
You got
here,
it.
I don't really go down and
Yeah,
find
scroll down.
4 second flashing.
So those two fields were the number. and the
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the old raster chart.
Yeah.
They had the mark number.
Yeah.
Lighter than the symbol.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna be able to do the symbol.
Yeah. Absolutely.
there,
I love that. That's great. That's perfect. I'm gonna take that back and we're gonna get that integrated. That's super.
Just for the vision challenge,
Yes.
and I believe they are like me.
Yeah.
The font size, really important.
Mhm.
And so if you do a hover, you don't need a
Yeah.
nice tight knit,
Can't be too tiny.
yeah. New Times Roman, font 8. Hover, big font. Yeah, viewable quickly, so you can look at it.
Then you read through white font.
Okay.
Yes.
Good point. Good
Yes.
point. Love it. Great, guys. This is fantastic. Appreciate the feedback. Okay, super. So I'm gonna go ahead and deselect the light list. Okay, local notices to mariners layers. So again, it's a lot of information and, as a web developer, I've got to account for the entire audience, right? People are gonna come to the website who just want to know about this, right? So they don't want, everything to load because it's not going to be usable for them. But there might be some people who come who want to know about all this data. So we kind of did it in two ways. Number one, you can select and deselect each one of these on its own, or you can click the load all LMM layers. And I'll go ahead and do that now. And you can see there's the blue bar at the top, plus the little text to tell you, hey, what exactly is being loaded right now, just to give you information. Again, it's 18 layers of data. It's probably going to end up being less than 10 seconds here, which is, I know we're at a relatively good internet connection, hopefully out on the water, at least close to shore. You maybe have a 5G, it may dip to 4G, but the idea is to get this information to you where you are. And you can see that a lot of times the scroll wheel, yeah, likes to zoom out a few layers. You can see we've got these massive areas here. That's an MSIB. So now one thing that Steve brought up, which again, I need to know as web developers, he said, hey, you've got a checkbox that loads everything at once, but you don't have one that will take everything away. And I thought that was a great point. So I'm going to take that away too. So I'll just kind of go through here and, I can select and deselect the different layers. I'm actually going to deselect most of them.
Chris, this is a real beauty, that you can get data that you want at all scale levels. And that makes it very different than the commercial products that make those decisions for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is so good to hear. That's something I would not have known. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing is he just saw, he started this process by clicking on important rural area. But once you're in it, you can go anywhere that the Coast Guard has that data. So you're not having to find specific location.
And we're, one of the things, the areas we're moving into is we want to get into trip plan where you put in an origin, you put in a destination. We're going to try to give you everything on that route. And when you're on the app, it'll be updated in real time. So that's kind of the goal, the vision for the future. And again, when we leave here today, if you guys have ideas, if you have suggestions, hit the NavSend website. I'll show you, fill out the contact form and send it to us, because this is the main collection way that we like to receive information. But, again, I'm open to, I love getting ideas. I love getting feedback. I love refining the product.
There's so much synergy in what you're doing and what's happening commercially.
So Chris,
So I
Are you gonna-
know where this is going.
are you gonna incorporate like crowdsourced data from, simpler, like the old Active Captain when it was a good website? Similar to that?
But yeah, basically that's what we're doing. When you all come to the website reporting on discrepancies, the entities that are inserting this information, of course, in the sectors, Coast Guard personnel, and the same ones that are generating broadcast this. Usually in a command, it might be the same person, or at least they're on the same team. That's one of the questions that I'll get to at the end. But, again, yes, we have buoy tenders out there. Yes, we have Coast Guard units out there all the time, and they're looking and they're reporting, doing the same thing. You, Mariner community, yeah, you guys are the crowdsource. You guys are who we depend on for this information.
Way more of us than them.
Exactly. And you guys are everywhere. So never, I don't want to underestimate that contribution. You guys help us.
So,
Yeah.
so I guess my question is, for instance, a depth discrepancy in smaller channels or rivers or something, how are you going to treat that? If somebody reports a depth, a shoaling in a near a buoy or something, how can we go to your website to access that specific information?
You bet. Okay. That is a really good question. I would say that's the 12.
It's like,
Yeah, I would say, sure, yeah. No, I'm with you. Okay, yeah, let me go ahead and. So from our homepage, down here in the left-hand corner, contact us, report a problem. It's gonna bring up the main contact us form right away. And we scroll down here, the very first drop down is a subject. And depending on what you're reporting, just do your best to, appropriately identify. Usually if it's, let's take shoaling, for example, it's going to be navigation.
Okay.
So you select navigation, you fill out your contact information, you put in your message specific to what you're reporting. And the way this works, because I built this as well, is we have all these email groups for the districts, for the sectors, for Coast Guard navigation, or for internal subject matter experts. We've got a team of AIS specialists at NavSend. And they're the ones who handle the historic data reports for AIS requests. So we make sure that it gets to the right subject matter expert. Now, for shoaling, that's probably going to go to the sector, right? Who's responsible for that area. And they're, under the same, response requirements and timeframes, 24 to 48 hours, to, maybe reach out, get a little bit more information from you. And then what they'll probably do next, and I don't want to answer for the districts and sectors, they'll probably send out a unit to verify, and then they'll enter it into US AIMS, and if it's pertinent enough, they'll do a broadcast notice.
So do you also take the inputs from commercial sources like, the Argo, that, Garmin that
Yeah.
take crowdsource sonar data and stuff that for
Yeah.
participants?
As far as I'm aware, yes, we
Okay.
are the one-stop shop for reporting navigation. And if I go back here, I'm small, but here, you can see we've got a variety of everything from reporting an iceberg, which we don't get a lot of. We get it here, right? AIS problems, LRIP problems. We are, if we have some time in the end, I'll show you our GPS problem report page. It's like a map of the world that kind of shows a heat map of where all the GPS problems have been reported. So, we take everything, and if you make a mistake in the selection of the subject, we'll make sure it gets to the right subject matters. So, put that out as you're talking to your friends, as you're talking to coworkers, or, say, hey, you got something to report, hit the Map 10 website. Okay? Because it is so important. Well, real quick mention before we get back to the app, we are starting to use unmanned aerial drones to go out and get pictures of ATON that we are going to incorporate into the app. So the idea is that one day when you click on an ATON, not only will you be able to see its data, you'll be able to see the picture. And this is also going to be used for validation of discrepancy. Someone says, hey, this ATON's not there anymore. They're going to send out the drone to verify, just because it takes a lot of time and energy to send buoy tender out to, someone might have reported the wrong buoy. I wouldn't say someone's going to, be malicious in making these reports, but you get them sometimes. And it's a lot of time and energy to go out and verify this stuff, because they got to verify that we trust, but we definitely have to verify. And they also want to make sure they take the right equipment and supplies. Take care of you time. So I know I'm probably maybe getting close to going over my time. I don't want to outstay my welcome here, but so discrepant federal aids, obviously, the kind of the same process. You go ahead and you can see all the different aids, and you can see its name at the top, and then you can see its discrepancy status. Now, if an aid hasn't been corrected yet, you'll always see correction status unreported in that field because it hasn't been fixed yet. But this is TMK missing. So for this particular one. And again, the process is, as the report gets received, it gets forwarded to the sector and the district, and Coast Guard goes ahead and dispatches the units it needs to verify that and the correction. Obviously, we know we have a hurricane come through and it wipes out one state time. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time. So District 7 in Florida, they're busy.
Yeah, they're busy every. So that brings up a great point.
Yeah.
What happens when an aid goes out, this group establishes PMU? Is that going to be reflected on?
It should, but I'll take that question back. Yeah, this should capture any of those changes that are. And real quick, then I wanted to go in a little bit more detail. So one of the questions you all had is, what's the coordination between what we see on the map here and what we see here and what we see on the broadcast list and various messages? Since the districts and the sectors are the originators of those, it's ultimately up to those teams to decide what goes out. What we try to include on the application is everything, right? And then whoever is responsible for determining what also needs to go in a BNF goes in the. So if somebody, but again, it's the same individual or the same team that's putting that in. And that gets a little bit more clarification. But you can rest assured, again, no one's perfect, but we aim for 100% accuracy. If we know something, we get it to you. Now, where's this data coming from? Okay, so all this reporting that goes to the districts and the sectors. District and sectors, they log on to US Ames, which is the database located in West Virginia, Kearneysville, and they enter it. And that's also where they enter the broadcast notice and internet messages. It goes in the database, and within 15 minutes, it shows up on our website. And it's an automated process. It's just one computer talking to another. Their computer, every 15 minutes, does a database query, gets all this data, puts it into what are called GeoJSON files. I'm going to show you those in a second. And they come through on the website. So within 15 minutes of something that the district or sector has entered, it'll be here. And the broadcast notice to marriage message system works the same. They enter something, the message goes out in 15 minutes.
So your machine latency is 15 minutes. What's the realistic?
And well, that,
Because
you know,
it depends on manpower.
human facts. Exactly. And
Could you make a guess?
I'm sure it varies from sector to sector, district to district.
Let me give you the part of the answer. I was talking with Greg, who runs the thing over here. And because he's the guy who manually does that stuff, and it's not done over the weekend. At least I'm aware. So what happens is on Monday morning when he comes in, he's got a big chunk of stuff. And a lot of stuff happened over the weekend, so it's not gonna be as accurate as it will be by Tuesday, that kind of thing. So typically, you're gonna find the big things are gonna be relatively quickly, but the smaller things. But I think the goal is to move to automated system down the road. Absolutely. 15 minutes. Oh, yeah, yeah.
You bet. And hopefully I'll be better to show you our solar opportunity, space operation. Because that'll eventually be expanding while it's with up here. Sector of Virginia. Right now, we're just doing D7 and a little bit D8, which is the Boca Chica, Texas launch, just a real big SpaceX rockets. Okay, so real quick, I think I highlighted a marine event. So your data is going to show up 3 different ways. It's going to be a point, a line, or a polygon. Point is almost like one. I'm at this location. There's a lot of functions. Line obviously is line, and you're going to see these different colors. Polygons here again. Click on them the same way, and this is something usually an event. Here's a regatta here that takes place over a certain area, and the whole point being for your particular time that you're going to be operating, we want you to know what are you going to be running into about. Go ahead and hopefully have some time to spend on the application and bring the data out to your area of operation. Now, there's a lot of focus paid to the commercial.
We touched the water right off the Langley Airport. Oh, so, pardon me, the top of the left now.
To the left. Oh, right here. Oh, yes.
Ooh.
See, restriction. Hampton Roads Air Show. Oh, that's today.
There you go. Real stuff.
Yeah. So that's a really good example. There. Yeah, it's just a really tiny portion, but again, you go venture in there during the air show, you probably.
You're on both points of them.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing that we discovered early on, we didn't have a whole lot of large polygons going in, but then they started issuing MSIDs and these test advisories tend to be like large areas for whale migration, things like that. And I've made it where no polygons should be covering the smaller polygons. So you should be able.
So that triangle at Langley, are those the actual points of the exclusion area?
Yes.
So
Again, this is entered by sector personnel.
okay.
And again, always human error, but when they're entering 2 fields, this is like the text-based field where they're putting in the description of the event, and then they go to the latitude field that defines the corners of the polygon. They make a mistake between what they're putting in the description, and what they're actually entering, but I'd say the chances of that happening are
I plotted it on a electronic chart and looks good.
perfect. Okay, awesome, great, awesome, guys. This is fantastic. So, real quick, let me do okay at time. And then
Yeah, what I would like it to get through is talk about advanced notices that are out there too. I mean,
Okay.
all this is good.
Yeah. The advanced notices and proposed notices. So obviously 2 different layers. of our L and M here. So let's take a look at an advanced notice of change. So this is, let's take a look at this one, James River Advanced Notice of Change. Okay, so a temporary discontinuation. Obviously, each one of these are going to be different, but you know, the proposed notice is, hey, here's a heads up of what's coming. The advanced notice, again, I don't know the technical description of, you know, the definition of each one of those, but you know, it's the whole idea is to give you guys heads up and changes there. So definitely two layers that you want to take a look at. And a lot of times for these proposed notices, there's a period of public input that you can reach out. And I know you have a lot more experience with that. Was there anything else we need to get into?
So that's interesting that, the time frame for that, the advance notice is already, we're in the middle of it already, right? So it must have also gone from an advance to a local.
I mean,
That's a little different, that's a,
Yeah, no, that's the whole thing covered like, right, and it says from whatever March to June, right? So, and they've already covered it, so it's gone from an advance to an actual notice somewhere.
oh, yeah. So yeah, that's a really good, yeah, you're right.
it should be off.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the kind of thing. And again, I do want to give the sectors and districts, you know, your federal government's not for. We do our best.
No, don't tell me that.
Our best, right? So as I was developing the application, then we'll say precedent. Based on some miscommunication as far as the deadline. The districts and sectors were learning how to move from entering information and and so it is a constant process of refining. If you guys see something, you're like, this is just not right. Well, hit that Edison website, put in the email and get you. Okay, so I did want to put that out, but yeah, that's a really good point. And the great thing about it is this is a living, breathing application. And hopefully I've made that point today is to the software developer, again, I'm here to serve you. So ideas, corrections, improvements, let me know them and work on it. We need to refine this till we get to a point. It's never going to be, you know, completed, but we want to make it better, better, and better. Yeah, exactly.
You want to talk about the path?
Yes, I was going to go through that. So we've got our visual display, our map. Thanks, Steve. The next one is, so there's still a requirement for certain ships to carry on board printed versions of the light system errors. And so we didn't want to take that away with all these changes. So the print L&M amendments, and also for those vessels who aren't required, we still wanted to give you the opportunity to, because people still love to print stuff, you know, print out this information and take it with you. And so you have a choice here on the second tab to select either the light little or the L&M. We'll just take a quick look at the L&M and we'll just say, you know, District 17, because I do want to showcase the different selections between print by waterway and print by category. If I go ahead and submit this, now this is a tabular format of the same data that we saw on the map, where you can see that here are the new waterway classifications of the L&M. And obviously these waterways were defined by CGN. And so that's kind of how everything is categorized now. And if I click on, say, ADAC Island, for example, there's only one L&M layer, one L&M category that has to do with ADAC Island. We got a lighted that discrepancy at some station. So you can, you know, sort these by waterway. Now, if I go back up here and I select category and I submit it again, now it's going to break it out by the different categories of system errors. It's done waterway again. Okay, that's fine. I'll take a look at that. Let me go ahead and refresh it and go. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. What's wrong with that guy? And this might be.
It's an undocumented feature.
Boy, that's interesting. Okay, well, I gotta check what's going on with that. Because that should be defining it by category. So I'll take a look at that and we'll get that fixed soon. Haven't touched this in many months, so someone might be in there playing around with things. But no, I'll take a look at that. But The primary representation is by waterway, and that's what they're directed by Coast Guard application. So
The question
again,
then is,
It's by Coast Guard district is the first, but what if you don't know what Coast Guard district you're in?
that is a really good point, and one of the layers I'm going to put in on the MSI app is a district overlay. So that's going in real soon, and just another checkbox, and also we're also going to turn into sectors too. So you can select the checkbox and we'll put an overlay and show you exactly where the district is second up. Where you are.
The whole splash page also has district.
Yeah, yeah. And if we go to, we go to the, there you go. We use this map throughout the website. We use it on the B&M application too. This is another place you can go. So previously, let me go back to the app. So, the L&M's link in the gray nav bar would go to the L&M page prior to the app, but now we have under my commanding officer's direction, it now links to the application, but to get again to the go back to the legacy local notices to mariners by Coast Guard district page. You can go here and you can select the district and you can see add the posted PDF for the local notices to mariners, as we've always done.
now, when you do that, there's only two pages that are gonna show up. It's gonna show up the front page, which has all the web links, everything. The second page is gonna have all the abbreviations that are used throughout the document. That's the only place you can find it. That's it. The old local notice to mariners, you can have then the rest of the 49 pages of stuff that were there.
Yes.
But when you get that, all it has got two pages. And so if you're gonna use it, it's not a bad idea to do a one-time print of the abbreviations page. And then you've got all the, because that's the only place you're gonna find, it, unless you go into the light list itself.
So excellent point, Steve. Right, again, with all these changes, the changing of the format of the L&M, now when you click on, the kernel, and as Steve said, you just get the actual data, you don't get prefaces. So let me go back. All right, so let me go back to our application. And I did want to show you that we have a tab for local notices to mariners light list prefaces. So this is something that obviously you can see it's under revision because it's being reworked, the light lists. Now, the light list, obviously, the annual light list, that initial section, the prefaces, really went into a lot of the water expert. What's an API? One of the kinds of API. What are some basic rules of the road? That is being refined, and we'll be posting that for each district in volume under this light list prefaces soon. For the L&M prefaces, it's now an abbreviated version where you basically get kind of the cover page of the legacy L&M with the associated data of some links here and a little bit of description on exactly what this L&M applies to, and then a second page of abbreviations particular to this district. So that's found under the L&M premises piece.
So, you mentioned earlier that you're kind of getting ready to focus on voyage-based information. For the light list, is there a plan so that if you're making a voyage from, say, Annapolis or from here to Annapolis, that you could tailor a light list to cover just the area you're going to be in? Okay, super.
Got in trouble promising time frames. But yes, that is ultimately roots. Now, see, I don't want it, but you know what? Hey, this is where I'm going. So, all that's to see, right?
Perfect.
And I'll give you another little bit of a sweet surprise here. We're also integrating some additional layers. So from our sister agencies like NOAA, we're going to be integrating real-time weather radar. We're going to incorporate all the buoys from the National Data Buoy Center and real-time data from buoys. So if you click on a buoy, and in that particular, some buoys report things like sea state, barometric pressure, temperature, water temperature. You'll be able to have that as well. for next winter. We're gonna, or it doesn't apply to you guys, unless you go to the Great Lakes. But we're gonna incorporate from the National Ice Center, ice coverage on the Great Lakes. So a lot of good ideas, a lot of good stuff coming. For it. I know I'm really, been talking a while here. The last two things I wanted to point out. So this data comes in what's called a GeoJSON file. And it's just a text-based file. I'll put up one of these. Open up,
Yeah.
pretty print, right? So yeah, it's a lot of data. So it's basically, it kind of looks like an outline, right? And this is all the fields and all the data that these fields. Now, is this applicable to you? Not unless you're like a GIS hobbyist. You've got like a computer-based GIS system, or plug it into Google Maps or something like that. Or even plug it into another navigation system that takes GeoJSON files. But the beauty about being a federal employee is that I'm not in the business of making money. All right, I don't work for Google. I'm not trying to make Google money. And so I'm not a competitor. So what was asked of us is by the commercial origin organization that, want this data to put into their commercial products that you all might take advantage of or provide, right? Because we want you guys to have the information. So it's interesting, take a look at it if you want to plug it into, another geospatial application. I know Steve mentioned what's maybe. Yeah, you're going to geek out. Absolutely. Take a look at what's coming through. You can see how it's broken down in different segments because again, the files are so big. There's a restriction on pipeline between Earningsville and us, Alexandria. And so that's why they've got to break the files in different pieces. But yeah, these names won't change. So if you want to access it now, you want to access it in the future, you don't have to go to this page and click on a link. You can just bookmark, that file link and you'll be able to do it. Thank you very much. Yeah, you bet. The last thing, we all hate when our apps get updated and things are moved and things are changed and that, but that's what I try to avoid as well. The last piece are the addenda. Now, these are just specific information in PDF form for particular districts. It might not have anything, but we wanted to give the districts the ability, because this did exist in the previous local system areas, to call out certain things. District 1 is usually our biggest customer with that. We have a lot of stuff that they put for the offshore wind farms there. And so we're constantly updating that document. But this is expected to grow as districts start using it more often and get us this information. So, a lot of great suggestions. I think you're recording this. Aren't you?
Yes.
Correct. If I could get the recording, that'd be good. But I haven't been taking that, obviously. All your wonderful ideas.
Chris, could you give us a feel for your relationship with the commercial product providers? Like maybe on Navionics or Aquaman, all those guys. What's that relationship like?
It is, I definitely want to say cordial. But it's not say like a daily interaction. If they want something from us, they'll come and ask us. But we do have an outreach team that does stay, in coordination with these commercial entities. And that was one of the reasons why they needed to have access to the GeoJSON files. Because that, the way they were getting the data changed and where they're getting it from changed. They previously getting it from.
Just an observation is that you have the data.
Yes.
They are much more agile. So their ability to adapt the interface is light years ahead. Not that you're behind,
Right.
it's just that they're light years ahead.
Sure.
The ability for them to put weather data, it's already there. They're there. Their ability to do what Keith was asking for, to do whitelist notification along the route, it's already there.
Okay.
So for instance, Aquaman downloads, and it's updated every time you turn an Aquaman, it downloads all the data on your local mirror, all that stuff. It's got the weather, it's got all that stuff, and they update it every 15 years, as long as you update it there.
So that interface is there. So if you could get into bed with them,
Yeah, absolutely.
and they could get in, and they want to get in bed, you've got.
And that the important piece of that is, since we're the authoritative source,
Yes.
you're not going to some random website. You're going to .gov. And that's what's so important. Us is that it's maintain that authoritative source. But because there are products out there, that have been doing and can do more than we can. You know, we don't want to limit, we just don't want to hold on to the data. First of all, we're not legally allowed to do that, right? But, you know, we wouldn't want to do it anyway. And, you know, I started development on this less than a year ago. And we are, you know, to this point now, our goal is to provide kind of the same functionality that these folks have been doing.
It's good stuff.
So
Less than a year.
Don't stop.
So-
It's good stuff.
I read your applicant. Space.
You bet. All right, so as I mentioned, hopefully we got submissions going on. Yes. Okay, so we got 2 missions. And again, this is, you know, we started out with District 7, since that's where most of the space operations were being launched out and recovered. But again, we've done some Boca Chica stuff. We did District 11 in California. We had a reentry last week where the astronauts came back. That was posted on here too. But we found that each district kind of labels these areas in different manners. And so we're in the process of standardizing the naming amongst districts. But so it's the exact same map, you know, when we want standardization, you know, you go one part of the website, you go another part of the website, you're not looking at something completely different. The menu highlights all the different missions that are going on. And when you click on a mission, it shows you that this is a launch hazard area, meaning that this is an area of the ocean that has been identified as susceptible to space debris falling on. So you can click on this, it brings up a pop-up, much like the MSI app. And in here, you can see the mission, you can see the time frame that it is applicable to. And then if you wanted to go to the broadcast notice to mariners message that this data comes from, you click on that, it will go to the B7 B&M dashboard, and you can take a look at all the different space operations messages as they've been issued as broadcast notice to mariners. So, you know, again, just trying to get you all the information, you know, that's going to keep you safe out of the water. So, yeah, so that's a quick demo of the solar app.
Yeah.
Now, eventually we want to merge this into the MSI. So it's one-stop shop.
That's a good thing to have. About 3 years ago, I was going up the coast and I got hailed by NASA that I either had to speed up to 7 knots for 4 hours or hold my position. And I was able to speed up for 4 hours. The boat a mile behind me had to hold for 4 hours.
And then, you know, real quick, and your question, a lot of missions, we don't have one now. Now we have an RNA, a restricted navigation area, and you can see that this is much closer to shore, and you guys aren't operating down. But, you know, if you were, and you busted this RNA, you'd be in a lot of trouble. Now there's something in these higher levels called security zone. That's in red. It doesn't apply to any of these missions, but it will show up in red. If you violate that, you're going to be arrested. So luckily that just really encompasses something.
So a question as I was watching you navigate.
Yeah.
You have keyed in or not keyed in, scroll wheel.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Okay. Just making sure.
Yep, I have that. Now, on phones, it depends. So, that's your phone. I was like, that didn't do it. So when you play around with this, but when you bring up the table, choose data table, the scroll functionality is modified in order to, you know, allow you to scroll down and select it. So, just something to keep in mind. But yes, scroll wheel, exactly. Okay.
Good stuff. Cut you off when I.
Oh, no, you got to get.
Really good. What we've done is ask you to go in, look at the site and play with it. There is a great user's manual piece that shows up, a help piece that comes up there. All those links up there have got lots of drop down data. The part I find, so I was telling Chris, the fact I can access on my phone, my tablet, you don't have to have a computer to be able to do it. So, and the fact that if I'm going to go from here up to, say, even up to the Rappahannock River, I can do a very quick call-up of what's there. And the other thing to look at is marine construction, because I mentioned there's a lot of dredging going on. Okay, for instance, Broad Creek going into Delta is being dredged right now. There's all kinds of places that's going. So you can just do a quick check on that and see what's there. The part I like about this, I use Aquamap a lot, and it highlights it, but all I see is a little cursor thing. This shows me a very clear, bright GUI symbol that says what's going on. So again, look at the system, play with it, and I think you'll really find it's very, very good. Okay.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
I know you gotta run. Barry, would you show them just what Aquamap is doing on this thing? Sure. And, I'll tell you what, if we could take a 6-minute break, we'll pick this up, and I don't wanna force you to go through this, but at least I wanna expose you to this. How's that?
You had mentioned the app map update, because I haven't exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna take an estimate.
Yeah.
Do I think the app is running away?
I need to physically like re-download and update it, or does it do it automatically?
It pushes it over.
Yeah, as soon as you bring it up.
If you do.
No.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
And third, means. Here's a good question. I'm going to see the controlling not straight on the human head is the Whitaker Bridge. The Whitaker Bridge, you can just, the controlling instruction is air rate to 65 feet. The Whitaker Bridge is not 65, depending on the water, it's 62 feet. And 63 feet. Which is, you get it built. With the way it was built. So it's time. It's not, it's winter.
Thanks so much, everybody.
From an Air Force Academy guy. There you go. You're terrific.
Thank you. Well, you guys are a wonderful audience. I appreciate a friendly audience. Oh, that's fantastic. That's awesome. Great questions, great ideas, right? I can't, I haven't been out on the water for a while. I want to get back there, want to go sail with my daughter and my wife and the other kids. So it's been a little while. Thanks. Yeah. We're gonna do detours. She could take it. Just. Yeah.
So that's how you read the So, man, what was just in the ponies? I'm like, oh my God, you hit me at application. I don't need the ponies, but it was okay. So,
We're still in what? It's unfirm these two students.
thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me to come and participate.
Actually. Perfect, yeah.
Let's go ahead and get back together. That's all I proud of them. It's hard, but. Okay, so I already mentioned the map is already incorporating a bunch of the same data. So capabilities that are going on directly there. So they show the dredging areas, they show all the same things that are applicable on that app. But they don't show it quite as visually, but there are always symbols that you can check, like the seal. So I have not, remember he mentioned 18 different fields. I only have seen 16. They don't even the proposed one. That's okay too. All right. And it automatically downloads every time you turn on the activate the app. Update the thing, you can go manually update it. It's going to do the very same thing that website does. So they announced it this year. This gets into the thing we'll talk very joking about is in fact all of their apps have been updated. So it's a good idea to check to see if it's not available. So if this is where they talk about update that information and give you the update. So this is just one example of how it would be displayed. You can see every place that there is one of these symbols. We'll circle there. There's some others around here. These are all places that would show up on that website as things, and I can go ahead and click on it. And this is when we get to this light. Now, what's listed here is not quite right. site has not been discontinued, it's only for a certain period of time. But you can click on it and it will show it up. Now, the other thing it does, and I'll talk a little bit about, any place you click on an Apple map chart, you're gonna get the web. And it's downloaded. So it's a function. I don't sell a lot of it, but it's a great thing. But this is what you can see here. I'll show you the dotted zoom line, and I'll even talk about Bob Hope. That's a Bob Hope track. Okay, Chris talked about local information, broadcast. Anybody getting broadcast signed up? I mean, I think it's a great thing. As I look at this, I look at broadcast, is a push. This, what Chris just showed you, is a pull. They will send you out stuff and you can tailor what you want to get on that thing. And if you don't want to read it, it's there, but it's there's the link. If you go to that website, there's the link you can go to. And again, it's that real time and get into a whole bunch of stuff. You can scroll through the different things that you can get. You can do it by history, you can do it by sectors, all this kind of stuff. So it's available to do it. And then you can go ahead and building it further, get into this idea where the different sectors are. So here you've got the second office for District 5, which is us. Click on the information, you put the dates in there, and then we'll take all the ones that are out there. Again, that's a nice thing, but I think it's easier than just go to the MSI app. That's the different solution. And then there's the kind of like the messages will come out. And again, it's a push system that comes out to about East River. You know, I got this thing, and I sent him a text, and he had been looking for the entrance point into this East River, and it was gone. And he said, "Oh, thanks. I wasn't going to look for it anymore. It was gone." So anyway, there it is. And they come out, you know, as often as they come out. So again, I think this is a really good feature. As you can see the kind of things it is. And you notice a lot of this stuff is reported one thing. And somebody has called that in instead of there. Let's talk about having to go out and verify it, and at least it can get a heads up if that's the case. And then he mentioned the space hops, and we will do that. But that's kind of a cool thing. Now, when that's kind of important, we're doing a delivery down to Florida, and so we were going right by Panama. And I was bringing it a couple of years before. I was bringing a boat back down to Long Island. And we heard on the radio the very same thing that you got, and there was an interesting discussion about what was going on. So that can generate so where do I find that information out? Believe it or not, being directed to the gate guard at the entrance of all time. The gate guard had no. The website wasn't anyway. This is kind of a good thing. Okay, so we talked about.
The same process would be if you're going up the bay and Dahlgren is doing a gun shoot test or something, it'll show, it should be there. I mean, I've had going up to Annapolis for down the bay, and I was chased out of a warning area because they were doing a shoot or potential shoot, and they, you know, told me to.
The ones that are corrected, I'm not so much concerned about because they're correct. Okay. But I tend to overlook the other tabs that are down there.
Yeah.
So that's why I mentioned to, if you click all, problem is you have to then manually go ahead and undo it. There should be a way to click that back off.
Right.
But you know, for instance, I was telling the guys up in Deltaville about the dredging that was going on because they hadn't been out. They weren't aware that it was going on. But you're able to find that information. And again, the fact I can access it on my phone, anything special. Okay, moving on. Update your, and again, this is the kind of the blinding glimpse of the obvious. Update your navigation, whether it's on your MFD or it's on your computer. Lots of changes that are taking place. And again, there's most of the Android and Apple products have auto or manual updates. These are pretty large files, so don't consider to do it when you're out in the water. Generally, do it where you can get pretty good pin on that. Your MFDs, obviously, that's the very same thing. Different systems have different ways of doing it. You've got newer equipment. It's easier to update than the older stuff. A lot of times, the only way you can do it is you got to get either a chip or a disk or something to make that happen. The newer ones, obviously, you can do a web link and make that in, but make sure not only the charts, but also in the operating system. Those are the big stuff. Here's the one for Garmin. They have a website that you can go into and check all your stuff. Okay, the other thing is, okay, we got this stuff, this equipment, practice using it. I mean, I was doing some stuff, and I hadn't determine waypoints and routes, and I'd kind of forgotten a little fuzzy on how to do it. And then it was at the last minute I was trying to show somebody. So do it, practice them before you go ahead and have to meet. There's lots of new features that changes the way things go. You know, manually updates, the manuals are generally no help. They're absolutely no help at all. Only thing they show you is what's possible. Now, how you get to the possible is a whole different thing, but it shows you what's possible. The other thing to keep in mind is almost all these systems have a factory reset, so you can't. Okay, there's lots of YouTube videos, especially for Garmin and avionics, on how to use both the old and the new features. But it's worth spending a little bit of time. Again, to practice, if you've got a phone or a tablet, you can do, if you're watching those YouTube videos and do it at the same time, really has a tendency to same thing. And remember that it's been a long time since you used it. So before you start getting out there and go long trips, at least plan to do it before you leave. Okay, here is a case of using the kind of the stuff that's available. Again, I'm not pushing Aquamap. I used to keep Aquamap and avionics, and now trying to keep up ideas about using both. So I've just gotten rid of avionics because Aquamap has gotten so much further ahead. But you can see they display your user-generated content, marinas. Aquamap also, if you get the very expensive $20 a year advanced copy, that you can get your Corps of Engineers surveys that are updated on there. You can get the tide and current, all that data is available to you. Again, they update regularly, but it's worth an idea to do that before you go out. One example I give is what happened over here at entrance into Cape Charles. You know, there used to be a buoy on the south side of the entrance there. I think it was number 3, and it changed, and it took Coast Guard. I know it took them almost a year to get the change. In fact, it took Navionics. It took them 6 months to get it updated. It took that Aquamap. It took them about. There's the change that took place there. So there's the picture of the Navionics. It took them 6 months to get it updated. So again, Navionics is a great system, but there are some demands. The other thing that Aquamap has the capability of doing is displaying the weather. So not only will any place on the chart that you click it will give you the weather, it also has the capability of getting up those weather buoys out there. So they're advanced. And then you can see the field that you can select here. And the other nice thing about it is let's say you have a route that you laid in, they will give you collected wind or waves or whatever it is. It will show you scroll over a 40-hour period of what's going on. So again, for outlining that kind of stuff is it's a poor man's approach to getting predicament and some of that. So it's very good. Okay. The other thing that they just added this year, not too long ago, was they've added bridge heights. Which says a pair on there, so you don't have to worry about clicking. You used to be able to find it by clicking the little link, but this shows up boom, right where it is. So again, it's a great thing to have a good. Okay, so in addition to doing the basic things that we talked about, practicing, updating a chart, finding positions, all those kinds of things. These are things that you just want to practice going over and doing, creating those waypoints and routes, how to do it. Activating the route and feeling the information that you get. All these things are very capable. How to record the track if you want to do it, and then import and export those tracks. You can do it at your computer. It depends on the system. You can do it at your computer at home and then input it to your system, or vice versa. So that's all good. And again, this is a Aquamap route. It's laid out down here, and I can get all that data. And again, what you guys are not familiar with it, but I can click on this route. And it will then show me the route, and it will show me it'll show me how long it's going to take me to get there based on information I put in my boat. It'll tell me how much fuel I've used. It will show me all hazards along that route, show me, gas places to get back and marinas along the way. So a lot of that data is very much available. It goes without saying that your MFD is very tailorable. A lot of people, it's surprising, and people that I see who aren't aware of just how much they can tailor their system. You want to make sure it gets you the information you want and have it be able to do it. Of course, they can check the units that you're wanting to use. And as most of you guys who have been down the intercoastal waterway or part of it are aware of the fact that it's in statute miles, not nautical. So, and just keep it. And depending on your system, you can do a lot more too. Okay, you also want to learn to use the tracks that are available. There's lots of sources to do it. Bob 423 is really a very, I mean, I just tell you, I don't know of anybody who's gotten more current than that. It's 4 different sections from here down to Florida. They follow the deepest water, and as I mentioned earlier, they're updated on a regular basis. I mean, he's got guys that actually go there. He's got little route buddies that are part of this route, and he updates that data. He gets it out, and he's publishing it now with the migration going on a weekly basis. And of course, it's all free that you can do it. So you want to be able to practice downloading the stuff. There's a very, very good link to be able to show you. But this is what it looks like. This is the big picture. This is all of them located, and then this is what the tracks would be. And that's a blow up of the area itself. So it shows you what the magenta line is, and then it shows you where it all goes.
So this is a combination picture of Corps of Engineers surveys and Bob's recommended tracks. And you can see that if you just follow the buoys, there's a lot of areas right now on the ICW, you will run aground. You will run aground, and you look like you're right dead in the middle of the channel.
The other thing about the Corps of Engineers is you can click on that and you can determine when the survey res was. So if you go, I found if you go to the Corps of Engineers site, sometimes you don't get that current. But the fact that I can click on that and determine just how current that survey is.
So absent a Corps of Engineers survey, can you just click on a random depth sounding and find out when that was done?
Unless you have the layer, you bought the Corps of Engineers survey additional fee to the ownership.
Okay.
But if you have, they'll give you the weather data, all that kind of stuff. But the Corps of Engineers is one of the additional things that you.
Because
I think the answer is no, because I don't think that the data's to that fidelity.
well, I guess the question is, then that begs the question: how do you know what the survey data for the depths that you're looking at going, up near Hampton Bar, for instance? Because since I, but yeah.
Yeah, now once you get that, then go ahead and you had surveyed that.
Which is a good point, because back in the days of raster charts, you do have source dates. So
Right, exactly.
That raster chart.
And I don't know
will go
what-
at the bottom.
I don't know where to see that now.
It's.
Well, I'll show you where you can see it.
Okay, all right, that's
We leave that, there is a Bob 423 Facebook page, whatever, so if anybody's following Bob's tracks and they have an issue, it gets immediately up on the Facebook page as well. Yep, you're doing the ICW at the Route 15.
That, and he's got this great page right here that you can go to that tells you how to download these tracks, how to update these tracks. It's just a great tool. And I will just tell you that when Barry and I were doing that delivery, that's what we were watching all the time. I mean, it was, and you look at some of the stuff, you're like, I don't know. If Bob went there, I will. And there's his update that comes out and whatever the guys need.
right.
Okay, I want you to also spend a little time getting familiar with the NOAA website. A lot of stuff has changed. We talk about the fact that the raster charts have all gone away. So again, like the Coast Guard, they have consolidated a lot of their stuff on their website itself. They've also changed in their priorities and the way they update. Now, this gets into the question you just asked. One of the beauties of the PMC electronic navigation chart is that you're going to get updates to that stuff a lot more quickly than you would before through the old last. They update those charts if they're aware of the changes every week, 7 to 10 days it goes on. So before the old raster charts, unless it was a critical correction, they didn't update it, and the update cycle for the raster was much shorter. Now with the vector stuff that's all available, they come much quicker. Much. Okay, and again, we talked about sunsetting, it's all done. They have developed a custom chart, web-based application, and I'll show you some things that I printed down with that. And again, even it has implications I've already talked about on MSI, grade safety. Okay, so just a little background here. The NOAA is the guy to consolidate all the data on the charts. So they get it from the Corps of Engineers, they get it from NOAA themselves, and they get it from the Coast Guard, obviously. They get these reports in. As I mentioned before, that NOAA updates their electronic charts for ENC every 7 to 10 days. They go on. It's only obviously the stuff that's changed. They don't know all of the changes, but there's a significant amount. I have Coastal Navigator, Rose Point's Coastal Navigator, and I update the thing, and about once a week I'll update, and there's probably anywhere from, could be as many as 200 updates to charts. Now this is all of the NOAA charts, or there could be just a few, if there are changes that were made to them. And again, because of the fact that every piece of data on an electronic chart has its own attributes, you don't have to redo the whole chart. All you have to do is update that individual attribute. So that makes it much quicker. Okay, as we talked about before, some apps directly update the information from the NOAA database. Okay, Navionics does it too. I don't think they do it quite as frequently as often now, but anyway, it does. Now, some systems, I know Navionics, if you've got your boat registered, where your GPS is, what the depth is and all that stuff, you can elect to update your data to the file for NOAA. I think is a great way to do it, because where we're going is not where the primary surveys are going. Those are all up. And again, they can put all kinds of information on top of those systems for you to generate stuff that's coming. So, as I mentioned before, chart updates come in 2 flavors, critical and routine. The critical ones are the kinds of things like shoals, dangers to navigation, that kind of stuff that's out there, buoys and things like that. These changes are published in the weekly notice to mariners. Now, just to be clear, like when the weekly notice to mariners comes out, it still comes out. And all it is all the waterways listed alphabetically from A to Z in the area you're looking at. That's all it is. There's nothing else to it. It just gives you the information about what's out, what's there, and so you can't go in and search it by chart number. Okay, it's done by waterway. But what you can do is what you used to be able to do with any PDF document. It's a control F function. If I want to put in James River, for instance, over there, and find out what's listed there in the hard copy, and put in James River, it will give me all the places where James River shows up. But it's a long document, but it's not laid out by chart number. Routine data, obviously, ordinary updates to what's going on. So nothing that's safety related, but they come out and they do it mostly. And again, they don't apply any of that to the graph and chart. Now, that begs the question, if you go to MapTech and you can order a paper raster chart. Now, my question, Dave, if you get the chart book, those chart books are updated every 4 years. So when you buy a chart from MapTech, you get it printed, it's supposed to be current as of the time that they hit print. Now, how much of the routine changes are there in that database? I don't know. That's the DVD. Okay, so this is their website. Lots of stuff there. Again, this is one to take a look at. You look under charts, there's a bunch of information there that you can take a look at. We'll look at some of that. You look under the data field, there's a couple ones. The only one I really look under the publications, publications. We'll talk just a second about the Coast Pilot and chart number 1, which is there. Under the data, you got their weather stuff, and you also get tides and currents, and we'll spend just a second on that. Now, the other thing, keep in mind this, that all charts are big samples. When we look at a chart, around here, we believe everything on that chart where it shows the depth is accurate. Okay, but that's not the case. It's all a jigsaw puzzle. It's all based on the zone of certainty or zone of confidence. if you looked at some of your old paper charts, you would see on some of them, you would see a little inset that looks like this over here. And it would show you the areas of yours. So this is coming in the bay. This shows you the area up here, A, which is the primary zone. That was surveyed between 1990 and 2012, and was a full bottom survey. Now, anybody go up in this area over here? Anybody spend any time up there? Yeah. Okay, that was surveyed between, wait for it, 1940 and 1969. And, oh, by the way, it was only a partial bottom survey. So is there a possibility that something may be not reported? And that's why you're getting a lot of stuff that's reported about changes that are out there. And then, of course, if you get back in this area, unless you're doing, fishing, I mean, that was pre-1900.
Steve, where can we find that?
Okay, where can you find it? Great question. Okay, you can find it if you go to an electronic chart. In fact, I'll show you. I'm going to show you where we put it down. So I'm going to pass these around. These are ones I print, and I'll get to that. But when you print an electronic chart, you get the zone of confidence. Okay. It will show up here. And this is one I printed. This is the Rappahannock area that I was looking for. And it shows you that there are some areas where it looks like it's going to be depth anomalies may be expected. This is in the out of the exam. So there's a couple here, and you can just pass those around this page.
So to answer Keith's question, which I think is a really good, I want some confidence level of the depth of the hand. This is
Right.
gonna probably be only
Yes.
place.
Well, and again, it's partial bottom certain. So again, it may be more accurate where it is and where
It's not, I
Yeah.
can tell you, 50 yards off.
Measurement of certain platelet counts. As I mentioned before, the Coast Guard or NOAA is doing a survey of a lot of stuff in this area. Probably not in the area that keeps on going, but it's because of the shift. And there's what you're got to slip these out. And it shows you the differences that you can have both position, accuracy, and depth. Now, in order to get you a range, yeah. In fact, you all know that if you go outside the United States, if you look at the survey data when many of those charts were done, goes back to the 1800s. And where the problem is location is it's not so much latitude as longitude because they were doing like that. Anyway, that's the whole difference. And of course, there's the difference between lead line and full bottom smooth. So basically, you got to accept the fact all charts are there. So if that's that's one thing you're looking at, then that gives you something. Just that threw this in, everybody's been people clear on the fire about the variation happening. Okay, the world was going crazy because it's all shifting the record. But this just shows you from 1990 to 2025, the new list that goes out that's good for 5 years. That shows you how much has changed in a time period. Not really anything that would be major factor. It's steer it.
Fortunately, you're on more of the line on where it's moving. Yeah, you go up.
Anyway, you can go ahead and. Now, let's talk about these charts. So raster chart, we all know that it's a static image, it's all printed there, and it had those nice little chart numbers, which you could all remember. And when you went ahead and you went into the NOAA site, when they had those available, you could go ahead and click on that link, this particular chart. It's going to show you the title, what it is, the scale, the edition, and it shows you all the available products that you could get. In other words, you could download that chart on your own computer. You can even get a little chart booklet. It's printed by 8 by 10 sections for the whole chart. It was kind of cool. Okay. That's all done. So you used to be able to get this nice little colored catalog to show you all the chart scales and all this kind of stuff that's out there. But again, so how do we find the old stuff? Okay, if you go to this website, you can go to historical charts. Okay, when you go to this web page, if you scroll to the bottom of this section, you put in the chart number, put in chart 12222, and you can see here when the last time this chart was updated. It was done in 2024. Was the last time it was printed. Now, I can also go over and I can click this down and print it out as a file over here, PDF, and I can bring that chart up. Boom, there it is. Now, getting to the question about looking at the zone of confidence. I'm gonna blow it up a little bit. Here's where the zone of confidence exists on this chart, right? There you go. Again, I wanted to just, I didn't blow up that part of it because I was looking for something else. But it would tell me over here if I look at this. Show me. It's gonna be here earlier. Yeah, it's a little bit different as far as the time. But anyway, you'll be able to get that, you know. But the other thing it will do is it will immediately then tell you this chart has been sunsetted. And what's interesting is you can still print this off. In other words, if you take this file, save it to a file, take it to a printer like I did over here, you can print it off. And they have a line down here that tells you to make sure the scale is correct when you get the thing printed. So that's how you can get your old raster charts. What I've done in several places where I got, 3x5 cards or 4x6 cards to put on key areas to look at, and it's blown up to be able to see, which is very helpful. Now, you can also go to Blue Water. They have a feature that's called Blue Water, the NOAA chart selector feature. And you can go ahead and put the area or the chart number if you know where it is, bring up what's available. And if it's a sunsetted chart, it will say it's sunsetted. And again, when they print it, it will be printed as current as of the time that they print it. Take the information within that. Okay, now, the guys at MapTech have come online and said, look, guys, we are going to go ahead and continue to make this stuff available. And they don't meet, these raster charts don't meet the carriage requirements for commercial ships, but that doesn't apply. So they're available. This is a quote directly from the guy there who runs it, that they're going to continue to work. Continue to provide chart kits. And they're making the effort to do it as long as people are not. The longer people buy it, they ain't gonna do it. Okay, so just again, basics. You got rid of the static paper chart, but there's still a raster electronic charts. And if you got in your chart plotting over here, MFE, if you choose to go ahead and raster the presentation, that's what we're talking. But it is still an electronic chart. Okay? So it's raster or vector. Again, it would be a static image that's available to you. Then you have your vector chart. The vector chart is it builds the chart as you go through the water, based on the scale that you're at. And as Gary mentioned earlier, different scales show different things, right? So you just got to be aware of that. Now, we're not the only one who's going this route. British Admiralty, which if you ever use a British Admiralty chart, it's a thing of view stuff. You almost frame the charts and view picture. They're very expensive, but they're going into the same route. So they're doing the same. Okay, no longer doing things, they're more updated. They're rescaling everything. Rescheming is the word. Getting rid of the largest, the changing scales, that kind of thing. I'll show you that in a minute. They look differently. You guys are all aware of that. Notable difference as far as safety features. And that's a big issue that's available now with electronic charting. You can put in your safety depth for your boat. And they're also changing as a default the way the depths are displayed. The default is now meters, not feet. Now you can select that if you go to the website and change it to tell them what you want. But the default now is 2 meters. All right. And that obviously again, perspective and detail. I always got to show this. This is probably what you feel. Is that this picture right here on the iPad is the same scale as this picture here. So you can see that I've got detail and perspective, but not quite as much as I did over here. Here I have no real perspective. And it may have a bigger picture, but I got no detail. So just keep that in mind as we go. All right, I'm just going to show you, walk through it, and we'll talk about the difference between these electron charts. So this is down at St. Louis Econ, and I picked this because I was doing some training down there. So this is a raster of scale 1 to 30,000. There's pretty good detail, right? And you can just, this is a typical raster presentation of the chart. Okay. This is now a vector presentation of the same chart at the same scale. So what you've lost is a lot of any detail on land areas. Okay, that's gone. That has a major impact on its ability to be used for other things. Now you can go ahead, different features will do a combination of raster vector presentation. Well, they have kept the vector presentation for for the water areas, the deeper areas, and they kept the raster presentation for the land area, so you can see the combination of these things. So again, that just gives you some feel of what the differences are. Now, as you probably couldn't see because of the detail, there are some issues with these new charts. The problem comes not only your land areas have a little bit of detail, but even the way that the buoy information is presented is that many times they're kind of laid on top of each other, so it's very difficult to see and read. And if you look at some of these paper charts I went around, you can see that very same factor. So the NOAA is very sensitive to that information that they're trying to make the change into the, but it does make it more difficult to see. And if you're using these land area features, towers, those kinds of things for navigation to be able to make ranges and those kinds of things as you're going in tricky areas, you don't have them available. So it is a big change, just need to be. Okay, so the rescheming of these charts, I kind of mentioned that. Everything is moving to meet international standards. International Maritime Organization is those. That's the reason why we're going to meters instead of feet. So that's what's going on. Also, if you look at your charts, there are always, depending on the scale and location, there are irregular borders, what to look. Especially if you opened up one of the chart booklets, you saw there were some that kind of had to turn on the side, that kind of thing. So they're moving away from that. They're changing different scale bands, coming and reducing the number down to just a couple different areas and showing. I mentioned the standardization of meters. Again, less than 30 meters, it's going to go to meters and tenths of meters. And that's just, again, you can change that if you're on your chart, if you're on your MFD, you can change that default, even if you're getting something printed, you can tell them I want it to be, but that's the default. And of course, that also resolving the scale issue. Sometimes you went from chart that was at say 1 to 40 to one that was 1 to 80. Difficult to resolve those differences. That's going on. So here are the new scale bands. And the scale bands really get to the degree of the detail. Let's have a discussion with Barry about this yesterday. Because obviously, if you're talking an overview chart, we're talking 1 to 10 million down there. So you're talking about not a lot of detail. But if you're getting into the area, in this area over here, got lots more detail. So it's better. You can select how much detail that you want to have displayed. If you look at this area over here, this is the areas in green are the ones that they've actually done. This is the local that just get there. So these are the areas over here. Center part of the bay has not been reschemed. That means they changed, updated data fields, they changed the charts themselves. You may still find some charts available by the old raster chart numbers in this area. They may not have been sunset. They may not be updated. Okay. Now, what that will then do is let's talk about the chart locating feature. I'm going to go back to I want to get a chart. And I go ahead to this is their web page to be able to access it. And now what it's going to do is give me this page. If you remember the old raster page when we went into, it gave you the chart number. It gave you that all that kind of good information. So this one is Chesapeake Bay. This is 1 to 12,000. Okay. And it's got addition to, it's got the date, and look at the available products. You have to have a different set of software to be able to translate. I don't have to figure it out. It also says here, if I continue clicking on this chart, I can get charts of different scales. So, by the way, the chart number for this is US 5 VA1GU. It trips off your tongue. Just kind of right off of every day. Yeah. So if I continue to click on that, it's going to give me a different scale. So here's one that's 80,000, and here's one that's 200,000. So again, different chart numbers are available to you, but you can't bring that up. This field, you can't see. Show you everybody. So again, this is the way you can get it, and the chart numbers again are not the old standard number one that you can use. Now, the way those chart numbers are done, every country, there are 86 countries that are responsible for producing charts. So it's for their particular area. Only the US and Great Britain are ones that have charts that cover the whole world. If the ones for outside the US might need to. Okay, but every country has. So they're the ones that are responsible. Then it's going to give you the scale band. That's how much detail is printed on those charts. Then it's going to give you the regional locator. Then it's gonna give you the lower column, they're gonna keep some things there if you grab it. So that's why you just don't see the chart. Okay, now, very quickly, let's talk about the custom chart application, because that's those charts are printed by that app. As the same app that Chris showed you, there is a good help menu on how to be able to use this. So if you want to go ahead and figure out how to do this, and it takes a little bit of time to play with, brings you up to the map. You blow up the area you want to do. Now I'm going to take the one for Rappahannock River. I'll talk to you about why. Second, but I can go ahead and I scroll into this point and over here, and then I'm able to select over here. I'm showing all the data feed. So I'm going from the general, the overview, all the way to the birth, and that's the amount of detail I've got. Now, obviously, I can deselect some of these things to get rid of some of that data, but it's available for me to be able to do. So then I'm going to go ahead and go to the next field, which is the next highlighted area up here. Oops. I go ahead and I have selected over here the scale that I want and how big I want to be able to have it printed out as a landscape or portrait. And then I can select what is my chart units in and my depths. All that's user tailored. And then I'm going to go ahead and click over the area I want to do. It's going to then build my chart.
But quick question, when you showed before the detail, does that mean when you're selecting that, even on a big overview chart, you can select the birthing data so you can
Yeah, but it's not going to show up.
you won't be able to read it, but I mean, but you can. So like on the one you showed before on the iPad that just had that kind of blue blob in video sound.
Yeah.
You could put no you on the one you print, you could actually fill
Yeah,
it.
wow. There, no. Could be so much. In fact, I did one of these things that I really cut out the birthing data because it was just too out. Okay, so I made my chart, and again, you gotta kind of play with it. I've also moved it around. Now, notice I've got a scale of 141,000. Why 41,000? Well, I do a lot of training out of Deltaville, and we do some stuff going up and down the Rappahannock and going to Urbana. Well, if you look at the charts for what we have available, Urbana is not part of a chart that's on the same chart that's got the rest of the river. Okay, so I said, well, why not make a chart with all that stuff there? So it 41,000, 1 to 41,000, I'm able to go ahead and do it. And if you look at the chart that we passed around, you'll see the chart that came up. Yeah, so you're going to make your chart and you can move it around if it's not clear where you want, or you can say, geez, 1 to 41,000 wasn't, maybe it was too much, too little. I can go ahead and make another chart. It's just an easy kind of thing to do. Okay, and then you can also put compass roses on there. Now, that compass rose, when you put it on there, it's updated to the latest data or variation. So, again, the charts are updated based on the latest information. So here's my chart. You saw it as a path of the run. I had it printed over in the local print shop. And I didn't get good paper. I didn't get it in color, but you go ahead and do it. Okay, did you guys all see? Anyway, but again, 1 to 41,000 is not a standard feature, but it gave me exactly what I want to be able to have. So that's what training. Now, the other thing it does is that all that data that used to appear on the side around the chart itself, warnings, all that kind of stuff, it'll come on a whole series of pages. Make sure that's on a confidence thing and give all that stuff. So again, here's what I did down for the St. Lucie area. This was 1 to 10,000. I was able to go ahead and put that down. The thing I found interesting is the majority of the area we were operating in was in this area, the very, very light blue over here. And that was depth anomalies may be expected. The next lower level says will be expected. Oh, they're out there. Anyway, so it's available. This is another one I did. I was doing some work up north of the Annapolis area, and I wanted to be able to get all the lights that are available there at one time on one chart. So I made a chart that was able to do it. So, and it gives you the ability to be able to do all that.
I know, sorry, but another quick question. When you put your lights on there, did you have the option to put on the chart like red number 2, flashing green 12 seconds?
It comes out with what's in the game. Yeah, that's one of the problems that you have with the electronic charts. And anytime they really have the chart name, the light name on it.
Yeah, I mean,
And they have different colorings the way it's done, and that's a whole. Okay, now, this is a guy, Mark Amos, who will print these, your charts on, blueprint quality paper. Okay, if you send him the electronic file, you can do, just save it through this and send it to him. He'll do it for $9. Now, you gotta pay for shipping, but he'll do ones, and they're not gonna be great for, if they will, it's on, inkjet paper, that kind of thing, so it will smear if you get wet. But they're available to be able to run, and again, they'll be updated as of the current. Okay, yeah, just very quickly, I don't wanna go into this, Chris was not even aware of this. No one also does the navigation update. They have one that will show all the critical and routine corrections. They weren't even aware of it available. And you can go into it, and you click on that deal and you can pick the area you want. It's going to show you all the changes that appeared that week and what's going on. It shows up just like I showed you. Okay. You can then put a polygon on it and do it by district. You can do it by polygons and it shows up what they are. You can click on it, the information you look there. Yeah, I don't think this is anywhere near as helpful. Yeah, it's something you can take a look at, and I showed you. Okay. Last thing, I'm not going to talk about nowcast because that's weather, but I want to talk just a second about tides and currents. And we're running kind of funny. Tide and current data, most of us who ever looked at it and worked with it, you knew that you were dealing with two kinds of things. You were doing with table one, which you see primary stations, and then you had a table with. Okay. And no, first of all, no one is no longer publishing time current tables. All of them. Then you can still get those done, but table one and table two are still available on commercial sources. And the nice thing about that is they updated their data to reflect daylight savings. The official government one never did, so you had to make that. So you had to go ahead and take your base data, your reference station data. Then you have had to apply all the time differences, the height differences, the ratio, all to that data for the substation. So in our area down here, we just had a few stations. I'll show you what that is here. And then you had to there was hundreds, 600 down the bed in all your substations. So you had to keep. Okay, and of course we know what tide is and we know what. So you can still do this if you go to spin sheet. Or if you go over here to the marina, they'll pick up a little card and they've got your reference station. So for the tides, we had Baltimore, Annapolis, and Chesapeake Bay Tunnel. For the current, it was Chesapeake, Baltimore Harbor, and Chesapeake Bay End. So those are all the time factors, the heights factors that you apply to get to the very few number of stations that were there. And those are all those things. Now, guess what happened? Finally, somebody woke up and said, I'm very happy. It's not good. So in 2021, NOAA stopped publishing it. Now the data is still available, you can still get it, but they got rid of it. So tedious process, you had to go through the process. So the other thing is it didn't account for real world. Barometric pressure. I mean, these are all rivers we live in. So if it rains, it's going to be higher highs than they should be out. Okay, if you get a very strong wind blowing, we've been around enough of these anchors to know if it blows from one direction or the other, it's going to be more wind, it's going to be less. More water or less water. So they didn't account for any of this. So they said that, oh, we got to do something. So they came up with the operational forecasts. And this is an area you can spend hours and we're not going to. These are models that are developed 4 times, updated every 4 times. And they consider all the stuff that we just talked about. Land, water, all that kind of stuff. Okay. The changes the way that they're shown. And again, if you get into the right field, instead of having currents that are either going ebbing this direction and flooding this direction, they account for the fact that ebb and that flow changes. You ever look at the ships that are anchored over here at Cape Charles and you watch the tide change? It's amazing to see that change as they go. All based on the current, not wind, which I always find it. But anyway, that's good. And then it gets into the latency issue that Gary had about. There's a 2-hour about delay between the time of the valid time and the publish. That's pretty good stuff. Okay, so here is one of the links that you can get into. It's going to show you all these spots on the bed. If you go into operational forecast system, OFCOC. This is where I talked about changing the way we get into it. So they've changed the way, this is the way it was, and this is the way the now forecast is showing the change in direction and speed of the current. And this other picture over here, that will change in, I believe it's 3-hour increments, and we'll show you how that actually changes. So that's an area to take a look at. That is linked to that is going to be tides and currents dot models. But the one I find kind of interesting, again, the word is just interesting, is if I go into, again, the same field, and I go into this just split this area over here, it's going to bring me up this picture right here. And this is true for many areas along the coast, but not all. So up in the Delaware Bay, they've got a good set of these things. Up around New York, we've got a lot of these things down there. So what it's going to show you all the buoys that are out there, and then it's going to show you the information that you can get. So if we take a look at this thing, I can go ahead and click water temperature. It gives me the water temperature for the buoys all of them. Go ahead and give me the winds. This is what the winds are doing. Again, it's a bit of a delay in this, but it's not bad. This is going to give you, you can see the trends and where they're going. You can also see it blow up by buoy. I went a little closer, I can get it right on the maps. Here again is another band get it. And I can do there with the nautical charts, click on it. Now I can also click on a specific buoy. So this one right here, it's going to bring up Sewell's Point. It's going to show me the tides for the day, and I can change the date of it. It's also going to give me other fields to look at. Again, this is more of a curiosity. Okay. Got nothing to do with the mini. So I'm going to look at this, that, that. So it's going to give me, in this case, it's going to show me right over here the air temperatures for the period. And it's going to show me the barometric pressure. And we all know that air temperature has that pressure. So here you see, if it gets warmer, guess what? Yeah. You can see this kind of data. It's got, and again, this is more of a curiosity kind of thing that shows you what's going on. And then you can also click over here. Here is observed water level, which you see is what was forecasted in the analytics. You can see down below, this is like below. Now, again, I'm always going to change. Okay, I can go in here and data products. I can go over here and I can tide predictions. I click that, I can come up with it by state. It will bring me down to Chesapeake Bay, Virginia. I can click Windmill Point. I can go ahead and get this first picture, which is going to show me for a period of 48 hours what it is on the tide of the going in and out. It's going to give me nice lows for that particular day. And I can also then remember before Windmill Point would have been a substation. So in order to get the data from the Windmill Point, I would have to take table 1, table 2. Well, what this will now do. So if I click the table, and we can change this to 24 hours or whatever it is. I can then get what would be the old table 1 for that substation. Oh, right there. It's available. So you can go ahead and that option. So lots of information. I know I'm going through this fast, but this is more to kind of let you have to see it. So a great feature. Yeah. Again, I'm in the same spot. I know the OFS over here. So here is the Chesapeake Bay winds that are particularly going for the day. Here is the tides and water levels. Here's the temperature of the bay. This is all the information that's available. I'm not sure what a whole lot does for it, really, but it's available. So again, the operational forecast system in the future. And no more plug for the Coast Pilot. I'm a big proponent of it, especially if you're going outside your cruising area. I will tell you, the long and the short is that you will find more information, useful information, generally from the Coast Pilot about the navigation aspects of what you're going to need for cruising. But cruising guys are going to give you, marinas and that kind of stuff. But this information will tell you a lot more information. Give you one example. It's broken into these chapters over here. If you go up to Chesapeake Bay, you look on the chart, there's all these areas that are listed. If you look at CF, Code of Federal Regulations, and it gives you a number. Where do you find the answer to that? If you Google that, if you put that in your Google or whatever searches, it'll tell you. But you'll find it in the coast file. Tells you the whole checking list. So then they get into detailed information about stuff there. And they got, this is one example. This is the Magothy River. This is from a Chesapeake Bay cruising guide, and it gives you information about them. Gives you narrow entrance, and stuff and stuff, reason things. Just take a second to review the file. Okay, now, this is the information that shows up in chapter 13. It tells you where it is, tells you the depths, how far inland it goes, critical points in the lower half, minimum wave zone, entrance to the area, current velocity, flood, mark channel, I mean, a whole lot more navigational information. I will tell you, especially if you go right down the East Coast, and I'm sure it applies to others, but we recent experience. If you're going to go in any of the inlets and around there, this is something that you really want to have in bed by. That, and of course, kept up. Okay. Okay, some other cool things. MapTech has got a new one out. It's called moremaptech.com. It's got a capability to click on their websites, and it's got all kinds of neat stuff about areas. You know, it shows their preferred marinas and those kinds of things. They'll give you satellite pictures of all the data that's available, different features have different visibility. Lots of capability. They have drone coverage for some of these things. And of course, the same information, contact numbers, cost of things. Another one that's really interesting is Offshore Blue. That's your blue skies. It's a yachting, boating resource center. This gives you some of the fuel that you can see here cruising, Great Lakes, all that area. It's got marine weather, it's got weather predictions, it's got all kinds of stuff available. And for specific areas, it's going to give you more data from individual areas. This is kind of interesting. U.S. Customs for coming in there, and Canada if you're going to go right from there. So again, it's a very useful website. There's thousands of them out. There's only two upcoming functions. So here's your Corps of Engineers survey site. Again, you got to kind of Google that. I don't have the link for it because it's changing. I mean, there is one here. This is the Broad Creek and Jackson Creek surveys. Again, the one that's being done at the Broad Creek now will be uploaded to this question. And you can get a picture and you can get the date when it was done. And here's the one with Jackson Creek. And this is showing right now, this was done survey in 2011. So again, they're not necessarily going to all be current areas where people scream the loudest where the money is available. Okay, that is done. This is from Bob. He finishes this article. And basically says, check your stuff, please. That's done. There's a lot of everything. Really?
Do any of the commercial, like Apple Maps, have that updated tide and current?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that accounts for the barometric pressure and no,
It's just a calculated dive.
just the count. Yeah, I know so like when I see the
yeah.
current on my Navionic, it's like sometimes it's close, but not really. Yeah, well, I know. Yeah.
Brad could do a lot.
Yeah, oh yeah, that would be.
But yeah,
Awesome.
it's a cool feature of me. So just like, Kristen wasn't even aware of it. So busy with taking the butt up. But that's what we're pushing. Again, I would really, encourage you to look at both those websites, get in there and play with them. And again, if you want, a chart that takes the particular area that you want to pull up, you can go ahead and get it done with the guy maybe too, or take it to your local print shop and just tell them what you want. And tell them what you.
Just for comparison, about how much would it cost to print that chart? Like at home office?
Oh, I paid $9 for it.
Was that sending it up to New York or was that they're just local? So about the same local.
And it would be cheap. But I mean, here's the one for our area. Again, if you want to get a chart that's getting on scale, we go from Rappahannock River down to St. Charles. Now you got the whole thing on one chart, rather than the 1 to 200,000, which is the typical coverage. Again, this gets into, they're talking about the detail here, see how much of this is overhead? It's here, all these depths, it's almost too much.
One for. What layer did you put on that?
Not all of it except for.
Not everything.
No, it's not bad in the big areas, whereas there, you can tailor the chart to what you want.
But we've talked about this before about electronic charts, talked about your detail and perspective. Really good, perfect example is like with taking off the regular load tree. For an electronic chart, on your chart plotter, the actual depth is, you're gonna get more and more detail as you zoom in. And if you zoom out and go from here to Little Creek, there's a 3-foot shoal almost directly in line that you're not gonna see unless you zoom in and look at that. So you talked about all of the stuff and looking at it, the routes and everything like that. Auto route is a nice feature now, but you really have to, when it tells you to go and survey the route before you accept it, you really ought to do that.
Yeah, you gotta fly your route. I give the example, we were coming back from St. Thomas and going into Florida. And in order to be able to get the route, yeah,
So, what are the chances of, so I went out and, installed an autopilot, did a quick sea trial.
Yeah.
Did a route out to, Yankee, and then was coming back and I said, okay, I'm gonna auto route to the Hampton River. And so what does it do? What are the probabilities of being on the exact line that it's gonna run over the range tower on an auto route back to?
sure.
Yeah.
If you talk to anybody who's got a YouTube site, cruisers, they will tell you, friends don't let friends on a route. For exactly that point. Because it gets the idea in your heads in the village. You're looking down here, you're not looking out there. And it depends on how fast you're going, because if you're, in a power boat moving at, 10, 12, 14, 20 knots, you go down, go to the head, go down someplace else, you're going off the helm, or nobody's looking for even 5 minutes, you've gone a whole lot farther than you are if you're in a sailboat going at 4 or 5 and 7. So yeah, it makes a big difference.
There was a Volvo or was it Max off of North Australia, did that, it ran right in.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly right. Right, because they just had a bigger electronic telescope and yeah, they run.
Nobody else did it. That guy was working from Patrick Streets and Okay, so a lot of information. Again, hopefully you found it was useful. Again, I really encourage you to go to both the NOAA and the Nav Center websites.
But you talk about the NOAA websites. The NOAA website also is really good at aviation. So if you poke around to that stuff, when you're especially planning a long trip, you can get a long-term view. You can watch the fronts come in and everything.
Yeah. But all the push is to be able to have it digitally available to you, be able to do it. I really like the fact that stuff that we talked about, MSI, is available so easily available. That for me. Thank you.
Well, as I predicted, another fantastic lecture. Thank you very much, Steve. And also bringing Chris over here to talk.
It was real fun.
That was a great lecture. And that marks the end of PMU this year. Necessarily, sorry to say. Racing starting, already started with the weekend races. So, for Yacht Club, we've got, on the 3rd of May, Coast Guard boat inspections, and then the blessing of the fleet, and then the post blessing of the fleet / next derby party afterwards. I hope everyone will show up for all 3 of those things. I don't know how many boats have signed up for the inspections yet. I think I ordered it, not very many so far. So hopefully you'll sign up or get your sticker, which might possibly keep you from getting boarded at some point. Yeah, that's right. So I think it was 4 or 5 last time I checked. And then on the 10th is the first race in the Yankee Station Series. I haven't talked to Jeff last couple of days, so I don't know how many people have signed up, but please, if you're gonna race this year, please sign up for the Yankee Station Series. I've got folks who got full classes and, good season. And thank you very much for attending. You people online, thanks for attending. And we'll see you next year. Thank you so much.
Well done, Dean. I am pretty pushing charges on the coast about 15 years ago. No, it's not. No, right. So it's all about it. And that is the coast.
I would never post this, because if I did something that's stupid, I would never put it online. I think Railroad just posted, last weekend, he had the Anton at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and, we're gonna take a nap,
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
and woke up hard to ground. And that about run, he got to the inlet, didn't wake up, and it ran hard to ground. Yeah, it'll do exactly what